I was still shaking when he said it. Not from fear, from blood loss, from exhaustion, from the kind of pain no one prepares you for. Our daughter was 6 hours old. 6 hours. I was trying to adjust her tiny fingers inside the hospital blanket when he looked at me and sighed. I can't do this, he said. I thought he meant the crying, or the stress, or the hospital smell. I didn't understand what he meant until he picked up his jacket. If you've ever felt someone emotionally leave before they physically did, comment alone, because that's exactly what it felt like. He didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't blame me directly. He just said, "This isn't what I signed up for." I blinked slowly, still processing contractions in my body. "What?" I whispered. "You've been different since the pregnancy. Emotional, irrational." There it was. That word again. Emotional. Funny how women are emotional for bleeding, but men aren't emotional for leaving. He checked his phone while I stared at him. "My mom said I shouldn't rush into this," he added casually. Rush. We were married. We planned this baby. Or at least I thought we did. "I need space," he said. Space. I was still attached to 4 fluids. "I'll call you," he added. He didn't. He walked out, and the door clicked shut. That small click was louder than anything he said. I looked down at my daughter. She stretched her tiny hand in her sleep, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. No car, no wallet. He had our joint debit card. Our insurance was under his employer, and my phone battery was at 12%. If you would have broken right there, type "stay strong," because I didn't cry. I calculated. The discharge nurse came in an hour later. "Will your husband be back to pick you up tomorrow?" she asked gently. I swallowed. "I'm not sure." That was the first time I said it out loud, and saying it made it real. She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, we'll figure something out." Figure something out. That's what he said too, but it sounds different when someone means it. Night fell slowly. Hospitals get quieter after midnight. Machines hum louder. Footsteps echo longer. I couldn't sleep. My daughter whimpered softly, and my phone died. By morning, I had still heard nothing. No call, no message. The discharge papers were ready, but I wasn't. The nurse who returned wasn't the same one. She was older, sharper eyes, quieter presence. She reviewed my chart slowly, paused, looked at my last name again, then at me. "Is your father Michael Harrow?" she asked carefully. My heart skipped, not because of fear, because of recognition. I hadn't used my maiden name publicly in years, and my husband never liked when I did. "Yes," I said cautiously. Her posture changed, not dramatically, but noticeably. "Just a moment," she said, and she walked out faster than before. I didn't understand why. Not yet. But 10 minutes later, 3 things happened at once. A hospital administrator entered the room. The nurse returned, more formal, and someone asked me, "Why didn't you tell us who you were?" That's when I realized he thought he had left me powerless. But he forgot one thing. He didn't know who I was without him, and neither did the hospital. When the administrator walked in, he didn't introduce himself immediately. He adjusted his tie first. That detail stayed with me, because people only adjust their posture when something shifts. The nurse stood slightly behind him. Different energy now, less casual, more formal. "Mrs. Harrow?" he asked. Not my married name, my maiden name. I hadn't heard it spoken in a hospital setting in years. "Yes," I replied carefully. His eyes softened slightly. "I apologize," he said. "There seems to have been an oversight." Oversight. Interesting word. I was sitting in a hospital gown, hair tangled, stitches still pulling at my abdomen, baby asleep on my chest. And now suddenly, oversight. What kind of oversight? I asked quietly. The nurse stepped forward. "Your emergency contact information was incomplete." I froze. My husband filled those forms, which meant he didn't list my father. He listed only himself. Of course he did. Control always looks small at first, but it's strategic. If you're still here, type control, because that's what this was about. He didn't just leave. He isolated. The administrator cleared his throat. "Your father is listed as a founding donor of this hospital." I blinked slowly. "I'm aware. I don't believe the maternity wing staff realized your relation." Of course they didn't. I hadn't used my maiden name in years. My husband hated when I did. He used to say, "We're a unit now. Don't confuse people." What he meant was, erase your leverage. The nurse looked at me gently. "Would you like us to contact him?" My father. We hadn't spoken much during the the pregnancy. Not because we were distant, but because my husband preferred distance. He thinks your family interferes, he once said. I thought it was pride. Now I understood. It was strategy. If I call my father, this situation changes instantly. If I don't, I stay in survival mode. I looked at my daughter. Her tiny lips moved in her sleep, and I made a decision. Yes, I said. Call him. The room shifted again. Phones moved, voices lowered, steps quickened. Within 15 minutes, I felt the energy change outside my door. Hospitals are hierarchies, and power travels fast. The nurse returned first. He's on his way. Not, he'll call. Not, we left a message. On his way. My father doesn't rush. Unless something matters. 2 hours later, he walked in. Not angry, not loud, just focused. He didn't look at me first. He looked at the baby, then at the 4-line. Then at the discharge paperwork, and finally, at the empty chair beside my bed. Where is he? My father asked. I swallowed. He left. My father's jaw tightened. Not explosive. Controlled. When? Yesterday. Silence filled the room. Not emotional silence. Strategic silence. My father has built companies, negotiated contracts, handled hostile takeovers. He doesn't react. He assesses. Did he take your wallet? He asked. Yes. Your phone? It died. He nodded once, then turned to the administrator. I want full documentation of discharge timing, billing status, and insurance coverage. The administrator nodded immediately. Authority recognized authority. If you think he just made a mistake leaving, type watch, because this wasn't just abandonment. This was miscalculation. My father sat down slowly. You were discharged without secured transport, he asked the nurse. We were arranging alternatives, she replied gently. My father didn't raise his voice, but the air got colder. My daughter does not arrange alternatives. That sentence hit me differently, not because I needed saving, but because someone finally said it out loud. Here's what my husband never understood. My father built his wealth quietly, not flashy, not loud, but layered. Real estate, medical board investments, hospital infrastructure funding, private equity placements. He never interfered in my marriage, but he never stepped back from influence. There's a difference. Within the hour, my discharge status changed. Private recovery suite, extended monitoring, billing flagged, internal review. The nurse returned with warmer blankets. My father took a call outside. I heard one sentence through the door. Pull his employment contract. My stomach tightened. Not fear, recognition. When he came back in, his expression was calm again. He works for Stanton Logistics, he asked. Yes. My father nodded slowly. I sit on the advisory board. Silence. Because sometimes revenge doesn't need shouting. It needs position. 3 hours later, my husband finally texted. You good? That's it. 2 words. No apology. No explanation. Just, you good? I stared at the message, then at my father. He read my face immediately. He contacted you? Yes. Good. He didn't ask what he said. He already knew. Men like my father understand weakness when they see it. Leaving a postpartum wife in a hospital? That's not dominance. That's exposure. By evening, my room had changed again. Private security outside, administrative visits, insurance review pending, and then my father handed me something, a copy of a prenuptial amendment, one I had forgotten existed. Clause 14, intentional spousal abandonment during medical vulnerability constitutes financial breach. I stared at it. My husband insisted on that prenup. He said it protected both of us. He never read the amendments my father's attorney added. If you've ever watched someone underestimate paperwork, type clause, because contracts don't care about ego. You have options, my father said calmly. Not, we'll destroy him. Not, I'll fix it. Options. That's power. But here's where it gets deeper. The hospital wasn't the real shift. The real shift came the next morning, when Stanton Logistics called my father and asked if the situation was serious. Word travels fast in boardrooms, especially when reputation is involved. My husband thought he left quietly. He didn't. He walked out of a maternity ward connected to donors, connected to executives, connected to leverage. And now, people were asking questions. I looked down at my daughter. She yawned softly, and I realized something. He didn't just abandon me. He gambled. And he gambled without knowing the table. That night, I didn't respond to his text. You good? 2 words. After 36 hours of silence. After walking out on his wife. After leaving his newborn daughter in a hospital bed. You good? I typed 3 different replies. Deleted all of them. Then I did something better. Nothing. If you've ever learned that silence hits harder than anger, type silent. Because I was done reacting. I was observing. The next morning, my father returned with coffee and a folder. Not a dramatic black folder. Just a plain one, which somehow made it worse. I made a few calls, he said calmly. Of course he did. I adjusted the baby against my chest. What kind of calls? He sat down slowly. The kind that don't raise voices. That sentence told me everything. Meanwhile, across town, my husband had no idea what was moving under his feet. He went to work. Clocked in. Probably told someone. Yeah. Baby came early. Crazy night. Men like him minimize. He likely painted himself as overwhelmed. Maybe even heroic. Man, hospitals are exhausting. He didn't know HR had already flagged his employee file. He didn't know the CFO had received a quiet email. He didn't know the advisory board was asking why a senior operations manager abandoned his spouse during medical discharge. Reputation is currency in corporate spaces. And abandonment? That's liability. Around 10:30 a.m., he called. Not texted. Called. I watched it ring. Didn't answer. He called again. Then texted. Why are you ignoring me? Ignoring. Interesting choice of words. He leaves. I ignore. And somehow I'm the aggressor. If you've ever been blamed for reacting to disrespect, type blamed. At 11:17 a.m., my father's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Small smile. What? I asked. That was fast, he replied. What was? Stanton Logistics just scheduled an emergency board review. I felt something strange. Not joy. Not revenge. Stability. For the first time since he walked out, I wasn't at his mercy. He was entering a room he didn't control. Later that afternoon, my husband finally showed up at the hospital. But not for me. For himself. He walked in looking irritated, not guilty. I saw it in his posture before he saw me. He wasn't there to apologize. He was there because something shifted at work. When he entered the room and saw my father sitting there, that's when his face changed. Sir, he said stiffly. My father didn't stand, didn't offer a handshake, just looked at him. You left her here? Straight, direct. My husband swallowed. I needed space. You needed space, my father repeated. Yes, she's been emotional. There it was again. Emotional. The universal excuse for male cowardice. My father leaned back slightly. She delivered a child. I know that. Do you? Silence. Tension thick enough to slice. If you think he's starting to feel pressure now, tight pressure. My husband looked at me then. Finally. You could have called me. I almost laughed. My phone was dead. My wallet gone. My ride non-existent. You left, I said calmly. He shifted. I didn't think you'd escalate it. Escalate. That word. Like I launched a missile instead of surviving abandonment. I didn't escalate anything, I replied. I stayed. That line hit him harder than yelling would've. Because it was true. Then my father spoke. You signed a prenuptial agreement. My husband stiffened. Yes. Did you read clause 14? His eyes flickered. Tiny tell. No, he didn't. You abandoned my daughter during medical vulnerability. That's dramatic. My father's voice dropped slightly. No, that's contractual. Silence. That's when he realized this wasn't emotional fallout. It was legal exposure. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Color drained from his face. What? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. Buzz again. And again. Finally, he looked up. I have to take this. Of course you do, my father said calmly. He stepped into the hallway. But hospital walls aren't as soundproof as people think. I heard pieces. Yes. No, that's not what happened. I didn't abandon. This is being exaggerated. I'll explain. Explain. That's what people say when consequences arrive. When he walked back in, his tone had changed. What did you tell them? He asked me. I didn't tell anyone anything, I said, which was true. I didn't have to. His actions told the story. He looked at my father. This is unnecessary. My father tilted his head slightly. What part? The board review. Oh, my father said evenly. That. Like it was a calendar reminder. You're overreacting. My father stood slowly now, finally standing. And when he did, my husband stepped back half an inch. Tiny movement. Huge meaning. You left my daughter bleeding in a hospital room with no transportation. My father father said calmly. You removed financial access. You removed communication. You removed emergency contact. That's not overreaction. That's negligence. Silence. Real silence. The kind that feels heavy. If you think he's realizing the mistake now, type mistake. For the first time since this started, I saw it. Fear. Not loud fear. Controlled fear. The kind a man feels when systems move against him. He turned to me. I didn't think you'd do this. I held my daughter closer. I didn't think you'd leave. He didn't have a comeback for that, because betrayal feels different when it's mirrored back. By evening, he was gone again, but this time, he wasn't walking out confident. He was walking out calculating, damage control mode, and I knew something important then. This wasn't over. This was just the first crack. The board meeting wasn't supposed to include him. That's what made it worse. He was told to wait in the conference room. If you've ever known corporate culture, you understand what that means. It means you're not in control anymore. At 9:02 a.m., Stanton Logistics executives gathered. Glass walls, muted tones, careful faces. Reputation was on the table, and my husband wasn't in the room. He sat outside, checking his phone every 40 seconds. No one made eye contact. That's when panic begins. Not when someone yells, but when people avoid you. If you've ever felt that shift, type shift. Inside the boardroom, CFO, this is already circulating internally. HR director, we need clarity before it escalates. Advisory member, his spouse is connected to major donors. Another voice, this is a liability issue. Liability. That word again. Marriage is emotional. Corporate governance is not. Meanwhile, at the hospital, I was learning something new. Peace. Not happiness. Peace. Because I realized something. I wasn't trying to win him back anymore. That changed my posture, and when your posture changes, power shifts. Back at Stanton Logistics, the door opened. Daniel, come in. His name sounded smaller in that room. He walked in trying to look composed, but confidence leaks when it's artificial. The HR director started calmly. There are concerns regarding a domestic incident that may reflect on leadership conduct. Domestic incident. Sanitized wording for abandonment. I didn't abandon anyone, he said immediately. Defensive. Too fast. CFO leaned forward. Did you leave your wife at a hospital within 24 hours of childbirth? Silence. That's a yes/no question. He tried to reframe. She was stable. That wasn't the question. Silence again. Then, yes. There it was. A single word that changed his trajectory. If you think ego makes men answer wrong in high-pressure rooms, type EGO. HR continued. Were financial resources removed? He shifted in his chair. I manage our accounts. That wasn't the question. Yes. Another word. Another crack. Were you listed as sole emergency contact? Yes. Did you leave without ensuring alternate support? He hesitated longer this time. Yes. The room didn't explode. It got quieter, because silence in corporate rooms is worse than shouting. Back at the hospital, my father sat beside me. They're documenting everything, he said. Will he lose his job? I asked. Not immediately, he replied. Then what? They'll distance him first. Distance is corporate punishment. You lose meetings. You lose influence. You lose upward momentum. You don't get fired. You fade. And fading terrifies ambitious men. At 2:14 p.m., my husband texted me. Why are you destroying my career? I stared at it. Destroying. Interesting choice of word. He left. I survived. Now I'm destroying? I didn't answer. Silence again. If you've learned silence is stronger than arguing, type quiet. But here's where it deepens. His friends started messaging him. Bro, what happened? HR asking weird stuff. Is everything okay? At home, the narrative was moving without him controlling it, and control was always his addiction. That night, he showed up at the hospital again. Different energy this time. Less arrogance. More urgency. We need to talk, he said. We are talking, I replied calmly. In private. No. That shook him. You're being unreasonable. No. I said again. I'm being clear. Clarity is dangerous to people who rely on confusion. He lowered his voice. You could have handled this differently. I did, I said. How? I stayed. That line hit again, because it was still true. He looked at my daughter for the first time that day, and I saw something flicker. Not love. Fear. Because now she wasn't leverage. She was evidence. We can fix this, he said. Fix. Like a broken appliance. Not a broken trust. How? I asked. He hesitated. I'll apologize. That's when I knew. He still didn't understand. This wasn't about apology. It was about character. And once character character is exposed. You can't repackage it. The apology came 3 days later. Not in person. In a text. I'm sorry if you felt unsupported. If you felt. There it was. The non-apology apology. I stared at the message while feeding my daughter in the quiet hospital suite my father had arranged. The world felt still. But underneath it, systems were moving. If you've ever received an apology that blamed you instead, type deflect. That afternoon, I met with an attorney. Not dramatic, not aggressive, strategic. Her name was Elise, mid-40s, calm eyes, measured tone. She didn't react emotionally when I explained what happened. She asked timelines, documentation, financial access points. When I finished, she folded her hands. Clause 14 is enforceable, she said. He abandoned during medical vulnerability. That triggers protective review. Protective review. That means temporary asset control. That means financial freeze. That means leverage shifts. Are you sure? She asked me, not about legality, about intention. I looked down at my daughter sleeping in her carrier beside me. Yes. At 9:12 a.m. the next morning, his joint account access was restricted pending review. At 10:03 a.m., he tried using the debit card. Declined. At 10:07 a.m., he tried again. Declined. At 10:11 a.m., he called the bank. Verification questions. Legal hold. On what grounds? Spousal vulnerability protection clause. Silence. Paperwork doesn't shout. It executes. He called me immediately. What did you do? His voice wasn't angry. It was shaken. I secured myself, I said calmly. You froze our money. No, I replied. I froze access. That's insane. No, I said again. Leaving your wife at a hospital was. Silence. Breathing on the other end. Fast. Panicked. If you think panic hits different when control disappears, type control lost. By now, HR had placed him on temporary leave. Pending internal review. Not fired. Worse. Suspended in uncertainty. Men like him measure identity through movement. Meetings. Status. Emails. Access. And suddenly, he had none. But here's where the psychological shift really happened. Our mutual friends started choosing distance. Not because they hated him, because instability is contagious. One friend messaged me privately. I didn't know he left you there. Another. Are you safe? Safe. That word carries weight. Because abandonment isn't just emotional. It signals unpredictability. And unpredictable men scare people. He showed up at my father's office 2 days later. Unannounced. Security didn't let him in immediately. He had to wait in the lobby. Waiting humbles ego. When my father finally allowed him upstairs, he walked in looking smaller, less polished, more tired. You're overreacting. He tried again. My father didn't respond immediately. He let silence work. You walked away from responsibility, my father said calmly. I needed space. You had space before marriage. That landed hard. Meanwhile, I was discharged properly. Private transport, nurse escort, documentation complete. No scrambling, no fear. I walked out of that hospital differently than I entered. Not because I won, because I understood. He didn't leave me powerless. He revealed himself unreliable. And that's worse for him. That evening, he came to the house. The house was legally mine under premarital property. He used to joke about that. Guess I married up. Yes, he did. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. We need to fix this, he said. There is no we right now, I replied calmly. You're ruining everything. No, I said quietly. You did. He ran his hands through his hair. You're punishing me. No, I corrected. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. And he was just now learning it. He tried one last angle. What about our daughter? I held her closer. She deserves stability. I can give that. You left, I said. 3 words. Final. Irrefutable. Weeks passed. HR finalized their review. He wasn't terminated, but he was demoted. Title reduced. Influence removed. Compensation adjusted. Reputation altered. Not destroyed. Adjusted. Which is worse long term, because now he carries explanation everywhere he goes. The divorce filing happened quietly. No screaming. No public drama. Just documentation. Clause 14 enforced partial financial protection protection. Temporary spousal support reversed. Custody primary to me pending review. He underestimated paper. He underestimated silence. He underestimated me. The last time we spoke face to face, he asked one question. Did you ever love me? I looked at him calmly. I loved who you pretended to be. That ended it. And here's the part people don't expect. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, because revenge isn't always explosive. Sometimes it's structural. He walked out of a hospital thinking I would crumble. Instead, I recalculated, and recalculation is more dangerous than rage. If you stayed through this entire story, type never again, because that's the lesson. Never ignore red flags disguised as space. Never confuse silence for weakness. Never underestimate the woman you tried to isolate. And if you believe abandonment should have consequences, subscribe, because the next story is even darker.